The way we lead impacts the way people live. This world needs truly human leadership.
So what I'm doing is, I do the same thing for my son as well. I have figured out very early that words, instructions do not work. He will learn more by seeing me than by hearing me. And I think it's the same story for my students as well. So what I try to do here is to show them what or how you can have an impact.
I'm Brent Stewart, your host. Thanks for listening. This podcast is an outreach of Barry-Wehmiller. You can find us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and Twitter at Barry-Wehmiller, and find our podcasts, articles, and videos at trulyhumanleadership.com. As we've talked about in several past episodes of this podcast, Barry-Wehmiller's CEO, Bob Chapman, has a passion for transforming the way business education is taught in our universities. We want to transform these institutions that train people to manage into institutions that foster truly human leaders who honor individual dignity and demonstrate the courage to care for others. In June 2022, alongside a group of leading university professors and other business leaders from around the world, we helped found the Humanistic Leadership Academy, the purpose of which is to provide enriching, enlightening, and empowering experiences to faculty and students so that they can reliably show up as humanistic leaders for others. Through learning, reflection, and engagement with like-minded individuals, professors and students are able to transform themselves so they can transform others. And you can find out more about this initiative, sign their manifesto, find out how you can be involved, and find information about webinars and cohorts on their website, humanisticleadershipacademy.org. But it's not only important to teach students how to be truly human leaders. The teachers themselves must model these principles as well. On this episode of our podcast, we feature a conversation between myself, David Pickersgill, who is on Barry-Wehmiller's outreach team, who's working with the Humanistic Leadership Academy, and Abhimanyu Gupta, an instructor in the Department of Operations and IT Management and interim director of Emerson Leadership Institute at St. Louis University. Our conversation with Abby discusses how he approaches his relationship with his students and why modeling behaviors of truly human leadership is important. And then we talk about his experiences with the Humanistic Leadership Academy, why he became involved, and how it has affected him. And now, here's Abhi Gupta.
My name is Abhimanyu Gupta. I go by Abhi, and I am an instructor in the Chapman School of Business in the Department of Operations and IT Management. I mostly teach things like data science, data analytics, statistics, and in addition to that, recently I have taken up an interim director position for one of the institutes which is a part of the business school. It's called Emerson Leadership Institute, whose job is primarily to work with the students and the other community members to create leadership opportunities so that they can be served with things that are not part of the curriculum.
What do you mean by things that are not part of the curriculum?
Sometimes they need training on time management, for example, and there is no one specific course in the curriculum that teaches them time management. Another example is consulting. A lot of students after graduating, they want to go to consulting, but there is no one specific course which is part of the curriculum that shows them this is how consulting is done. So what we do is we take those kind of residual, if I may say this word, topics, and we try to arrange seminars, webinars, courses, etc. And we offer them to the students, we offer them to the outside community members. We also serve as the gateway of the relationship between the students and the outside companies as well. For example, they want to be involved, and we say that why don't you come and teach us this, because we are looking for someone who can teach this. So that's how they come in, and they are the instructors. They teach our students some of those topics, real practical topics, not academic topics. And that's how they create an engagement. We have an engagement, they get to know the students with a long-term goal of, identifying them and recruiting them maybe after they graduate.
The other thing I'd be interested to talk about, Abhi, is at the Humanistic Leadership Academy, we're wanting to create leaders with the skills and the courage to care. And one of the things that we really found engaging, when I met you for the first time, it was clear within a few minutes that you model that care for your students. Abhi's quite modest, and he's also won a couple of awards for his presence in the university and for his teaching. So he's really well regarded by the students. And I think the way that you care for your students models to them how to care for others, and we hope they'll take that on. So I'd love to hear some of the things that you've been doing since you took on directorship of the institute, in how you display that care. Well, and in your when you're lecturing as well, how you display that care for your students.
So first of all, the background is that I came to academia very late in my life. I had a previous career, about 17 years, and then I wanted to change it. When I came to academia, I took my own approach. I thought that might be a good idea strategically to start from a very different point. And slowly I started seeing signs that it is working. And the approach was this, that I wanted to make teaching a two-way process. Usually teaching is perceived as a one-way process. I'm here, I'm delivering lectures, I'm instructing you, and you are just being in compliance with whatever standards I set for you, and I'm very rigid. And I grew up this way. When I was studying, I was this way. I experienced these kind of situations, and I wanted to change that. So I tried to make it a two-way process. It's very important for me to listen to them as well, as it is important for them to listen to me. So that's where I believe somewhere the caring came into picture. I'm usually very flexible in terms of extending the due dates for the assignments, because sometimes they are too stressed with other courses and everything. I believe that it's very important for them to have a comfortable and trusting environment for learning, and I try to create that. Sharing information is part of my job, but I think it's more important for me to create the environment so that they feel interested and they ask questions. Basically, I facilitate self-learning more than I give them information. So that's what I was trying to do from day one, and I figured out that it was working from the very beginning, so I just kept going that way.
And we were just connecting over tea. I, as an English person, I love tea. You, as an Indian, you also have a cultural heritage of tea. And could you just say how you use tea in your care for people?
Sure. When I took this position, even before that, I believe, a lot of students come to my office and ask questions, and those questions are not necessarily about the courses that I teach. Sometimes they are personal questions. I'm in this situation, what should I do? And I work really hard to, first of all, establish that trusting relationship. They trust me. And when these kind of conversations started happening, I thought it might be a good idea to introduce tea, because I want to encourage them to come to me, and not only to me, but to other professors as well, because we are here to help you. And start conversation, ask questions, any question you want. I might know the answer. If I know the answer, I'll tell you. If I do not, I will find out the answer for you, or I'll direct you to someone who knows the answer. So to support that kind of environment of trust, I introduced a tea service in my office. So I have an electric kettle in my office, and I have some tea bags, and whenever someone comes, I offer tea. Do you want to have some tea? Do you want to have a conversation over tea? And I also say that, even if you don't have any questions, just come by and have some tea with me, and we'll chat. And it worked very well. It's still working very well. A lot of students, they come and they just say that, hey, can I sit down in your office and have lunch with you? And I do that. That opens so much of the opportunities for me to serve them, not only in terms of the topics that I teach, but also in terms of someone who can be a good mentor to them. Another background to that is that my son is also going to college this fall, and sometimes I try to see from his eyes as well. And I realized that if there is someone who can be a good mentor, a personal mentor, whom they trust and they can talk to about anything, it would be really good help for him. So I just try to be the person I want for my son.
That's awesome. And it's interesting. I'd love to hear how that caring affects your teaching, and how the students learn. Because the subject that you're in, it's not a soft subject. It's data science. It's working with numbers.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
So people might think, well, actually, it's just about the facts, just about the numbers. It's not a people subject. It doesn't really matter how people feel. They just need to get the numbers in the right order and put the right figure at the bottom of the spreadsheet and that kind of thing.
Right.
But that's the opposite approach. So could you say a bit about that?
Sure. For these kind of technical topics, the traditional approach was to focus on the how-tos,
Yeah.
and I changed that. Because with the new technologies, the large language models and whatnot, I am convinced that we can find out information very quickly and very easily. For example, if this microphone is broken, give me half an hour, I'll Google it and I'll fix it. We are going towards that kind of a world. And that changes everything, that changes education. Because now our job is not to give information, but to teach people how to ask the right questions. Because if I can ask the right question, I can always find the answer for that. Right? So that's how I shifted my teaching towards why and what versus the how-tos. And I'm a very technical person. I had a long career in IT consulting. I'm very confident with coding and everything. And when I realized that, I spent some time creating some tools, some websites. I mean, there are some code generators that really help them with the how-to aspects. But I spend a lot of time talking about the whys and the whats. For example, data science is about using numbers and data to solve problems and make decisions. So I teach them to ask, what is my problem? What I'm trying to solve here? How that is going to benefit me? And things like that. And then slowly, what question that I should ask? And once they figure that out, and that is primarily what my teaching is, and once they figure that out, they then know what to do, how to find the answers.
Because it's no good just having a number if you don't really understand how that relates to the real world.
Exactly.
You can get the perfectly right number, but it's answering a I think about
Exactly.
I don't know if you ever read Douglas Adams, but they in The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, this alien race creates a supercomputer to come up with the answer to life, the universe, and everything, and it comes out, and it spends hundreds and thousands of years coming up with the answer, and the answer is 42, and these aliens are like, what does that mean? And the computer's like, you asked me to find the answer. The answer's 42. You don't really know what the question is. And so they then had to build a bigger computer to find out actually, because finding out the right question was more important than finding the answer.
And also, how you are computing that number. What makes sense? I mean, are you adding two numbers? Are you subtracting two numbers? What makes the most sense?
Yeah.
Right? So it's basically why and the what.
Yeah.
And yeah, that is primarily how I try to teach.
And don't one of my thoughts as well is that you have to have safety. You have to have an environment of care in order for people to ask the right questions.
Exactly. It is okay for anyone to say that I'm lost.
Yeah.
I don't understand a single thing that you
Yeah.
are
I know that
talking
feeling
about.
in a lecture.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's very important for me to create that environment where the students can say that to me, because I'm just not doing my job here. I mean, this is just not a job that I just come and do and go home and forget
Yeah.
about it. I mean, I assume much more responsibility. It's not a transaction to me. It's about a relationship, and that's how I keep connected with my students even after they graduate. And that is my whole idea. That is the objective. That I'm here for you. You tell me how I can help you, and this relationship goes beyond your graduation, for example. And I'm very glad, I'm very happy and very proud that many of my students, they keep in touch with me.
Hey, Abby, how this care that you're showing to your students, and hopefully that your students are feeling, how are you hoping that they take that to their careers? When they become business leaders, how are you hoping the experience that they've had manifests itself in what they do?
Great question. I'm a believer of only one form of leadership, which is leadership by example. So what I'm doing is, and I do the same thing for my son as well. I have figured out very early that instructions do not work at all. He will learn more by seeing me than by hearing me. And I think it's the same story for my students as well. So what I try to do here is to show them what or how you can have an impact. And that is exactly what I believe in, and that is exactly what I try to do. That instead of telling them do this or do that, I just do this in front of them, and that is part of that. And I hope that they take this message and they manifest that in their careers when they are professionals later on, and not only in their professions but in their own life, personal life as well. One of the primary reasons why I left my previous career was that I realized that I was not making an impact, I was not being happy, and I can do more. I think that was the feeling why I left that career. It was not an easy transition, but I'm glad that I'm here today. I have gone through struggles in my life. I think everyone does. I'm no exception. But there was a point of time in my life I realized that I have lived my life already. I have fulfilled all my responsibilities, and this is my time to just be myself and do the things that I want to do. I stopped chasing everything. I stopped chasing money. I stopped chasing power or designation, and I realized that my time is running out, and I did not want to have a regret. So maybe that is, again, thank you for the question. I did not even think about this. I'm thinking now, but maybe that is what was driving that. I don't take this, whatever I do, I don't take this as my job. I take that as my duty, and I'm not chasing anything. I'm not expecting anything from anyone. I just do not want to have any regrets, and probably that is what is driving all this. I don't know if it makes sense.
No, it does. You know, one of the things that you were saying earlier when you were answering one of the previous questions is you were talking about leading by example. One of the things that we talk about a lot here is how the way we lead impacts the way people live. And it sounds that's very similar to what you were saying. And so as you're equipping these students to go out and be leaders and impact other people's lives, what are some of the things that you try to impress on them? I mean, even in terms of like being a consultant or using data in their day-to-day, what's something that you would impress upon them to do that in a way where they're going to impact somebody's life and not just fulfill a role or fulfill that particular duty?
Well, I personally believe that is my duty. That comes from my spiritual foundation. And I also believe that it's everyone's duty to take care of others, help others. And I know that I'm not teaching them philosophy or spirituality, but I sometimes try to very subtly, share this message with them that is what it is about. It's not about how much money you're saving. It's not about how much power you have, but how many lives you impact, you change. That is what matters. Again, I am not religious at all. I don't teach any of those things, but probably with my actions, I try to very subtly, share this message with my students.
Yeah. It seems to be such more meaningful thing to think about life in terms of, well, how can I make a difference to others? How can I give to others? How can I end my life having made an impact, even if I don't always know the impact that I've made? Specifically, hopefully we do, and hopefully people give you feedback and show appreciation. But it does seem like such a more meaningful way to live and fulfilling way to live, rather than measuring by the number of dollars in the bank.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
How did you get connected with all of these folks here, with Brian and David?
Ben Smith.
Yeah.
And Louis Sheets.
Yeah.
I think those are the people who were already connected, and they connected Brian and David with me as well. And that's how it started. I mean, I remember we had our first meeting over Zoom, and then we met a couple of times, and that's how it started.
David, what was the impetus for you to connect with Abby, for you guys?
A lot of things we do are very organic. Part of the philosophy and lots of what Barry-Wehmiller does and HLA does is we think about feeding the hungry, or we're not trying to push a message to people that are not receptive. What we're wanting to do is find partners who we connect with them as there's that kind of spark and that mutual understanding. And so in meeting you, Abby, and connecting with Slew, it's just an organic thing of like, oh, here's someone else who is on the same wavelengths. I was meeting with someone yesterday from the Humanistic Leadership Academy with Patrick, who's on the leadership of the HLA, and he was talking about this wave that he sees coming in. He started his own fair trade business at a time when really fair trade wasn't that prominent, and grew the business and was very successful. But he was at Davos, I think it was last month, and he sees in various different places this wave coming of people wanting to do business in a different way, of wanting to encourage leaders to lead in a different way. And so being part of that kind of movement and connecting with different people like yourself, like Ben at Slew, and people all the way around the country, around the world through the HLA is really exciting. But I love the fact that when we get on a HLA call, we do it at like 7 a.m. here or 8 a.m. here Central Time in the US. But we have people from Europe, from South America, we even had on the last cohort, we had someone dialing in from Japan it was the middle of the night for him. So we have this connection around the world with people, university lecturers and academics and professors who have this same kind of heart, that see this need to change how we teach business. and to make a difference to tomorrow's leaders. So I'd love to hear how you found the HLA webinar series that you've been on over the past couple of weeks.
It was extremely useful and insightful. Sometimes I feel that I don't have people whom I can share my ideas with, and I wanted to be part of a community with the like-minded people where I can see a reflection of my thoughts and my ideas in someone else. The reason is simple. I just really want to believe that I am not crazy. Whatever I'm thinking I'm doing is something that others are thinking as well. And I was looking for that kind of a validation for some time. And I was trying various forums. When you forwarded the invite, I joined and I immediately found that this is it. And I could totally relate to people. I loved the breakout sessions where we shared our stories with each other. We got to know each other, and I know that these people are very much like me, and I'm not unique or crazy, or I'm not something completely out of the line. I mean, this is not how teachers should think. I mean, I wanted some kind of validation in some form, and that is when I tried, and I found this extremely insightful, and I was very happy that I joined the webinars. I always talk to some of my colleagues or other professors who are not in SLU, outside SLU, but they're good friends of mine, and some of the challenges that they share with me, they are not challenges to me. And I sometimes think that we think very differently. One example is that I heard from someone that a lot of students are cheating. They're copying each other's answers in their take-home exams and everything. And that is not acceptable. I'm going to report them, and so on. And then I started asking questions. Have you ever tried to find out why they're doing this? Because my understanding is that they're doing it because they're taking this course because they need to take this course. So that means clearly, probably you are not making this course interesting to them. And when I say this, it does not work very well,
Yeah.
I really wanted someone who will agree to me on those points, very selfishly speaking though, but I wanted people to say that, no, it makes sense. Because other than that, it's all in my head. And I do not know whether it is practical or impractical, right or wrong.
Yeah.
So that was my need for validation, that I wanted someone to agree to me, to say that whatever you are thinking is making sense. And that was my driving factor there.
Yeah.
Is there anything that comes to mind that was some of the most significant? That sounds like a significant moment. They were either ahas or, oh yeah, this is something I'm really definitely going to jot down and think more about.
I think the first thing that comes in my mind is the structure of those webinar series, the topics that you chose. I think it was very smart. You talked about leadership, not you, rather we talked about leadership, we talked about trust. And to me, these are all ingredients, very important ingredients in a classroom or in a teaching or learning environment. Not many people think from that perspective. I mean, I think teaching is one form of leadership. I'm sure that not many people think that way. So that's where I connect with leadership when it comes to teaching. And I received a few ideas, I heard a few stories when I was in that webinar about that as well. I believe I met a few people in my breakout room where we were discussing about trust. And how trust is a very important ingredient in classroom, and how they perceive, what are the challenges that they had, what are the things that they do. And that kind of resonated with me, because maybe not the exact same things, but I try to do things in a very similar way sometimes. So I got a few ideas from them, how we can do things, and that I feel kind of enriched me.
It makes me think of that story, which appears in Everybody Matters, the book, about how in our facilities traditionally in manufacturing, all the parts are all locked up in cages. People have to sign them out and that kind of thing. If you go today to any of our manufacturing facilities, when people need a part, they just go and pick it up, because they're trusted. They're trusted that they're going to take the part and they're going to use it for it. They're not going to be taking it and selling it on eBay or anything like that. But that same question, that thing about, well, are you making your lectures, maybe your lectures aren't really that interesting, what's the reason people do it? Well, actually, in a manufacturing environment, do people care about this, about the work they're doing? Are they emotionally invested? Because when someone cares about what they're doing, they're not going to cross the lines. When someone's passionate about it and they believe in it, and when they're learning because they believe in what they're learning, when they're working because they believe in the business that they're working in, actually they will act in a trustworthy way. More, 100% of the time, but way, way more. And so you don't need to put all these barriers and protections in, because people are invested. So that's
exactly,
and that's where you kind of see this. We talk about people and profit in harmony. Well, this is one of the effects of when people are in an environment of high trust. They act in a trustworthy way, and so you don't have to spend money building walls to protect yourself from your own workers. You as a lecturer don't have to spend time, checking whether people have done work on ChatGPT instead of actually doing it for themselves. Because the way I understand it, you design your lectures and your questions is, first of all, people are engaged, and secondly, you're testing the right things. You're asking them the right kind of questions. It's not just a box-ticking exercise. They're not just doing it for a grade.
Absolutely. The same way, I do not want my students to be bodies to me.
Yeah.
I do not want myself to be a body to them either.
Yeah.
Right? It's just one professor. I forgot the name of that professor who taught me this.
Yeah.
Again, it's a two-way process. I try to remember my students' name. I'm not very good at it, so I'm still working on it. But I try to remember. I put conscious effort to remember the names of my students. At the same time, I want to be their friend that they can refer to, that they can reach out to if needed and when needed.
And that's, again, that kind of chimes with our thing of everybody matters, and people really being treated as real people and individuals.
Exactly.
And it does make sense. When people, again, there's kind of, I guess, a business thing of like, you just treat people as functionaries and objects, and that's efficient. You don't spend any time investing in people as people. They're just there for the labor they produce, for the time they're on the job. But it's not as effective. It doesn't need to. You don't get passionately engaged people who care and are invested when you do that. You just get literally almost like a machine. You could replace them with a machine. And
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it goes back to coming back to your previous question. It's about being more humanistic.
Yeah.
Right? Because we need to be very clear about what machines can provide us. And not only we need to be aware of it, we need to embrace it. And then what is remaining is human. And that is where all the energy and the focus of all the teachers should be in.
Again, you can find out more about the Humanistic Leadership Academy, sign their manifesto, find out how you can be involved, and find information about webinars and cohorts on their website, humanisticleadershipacademy.org. Don't forget to find us and connect on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and Twitter @Barry-Wehmiller, And you can find more podcasts, articles, and videos at trulyhumanleadership.com. I'm Brent Stewart. Thanks for listening.